Treasure Island, Part 3. Jim begins his next day on the island feeling frightened and exhausted. The island is undergoing a major change, and signs of mutiny are emerging among the crew as the atmosphere on board the ship grows tense. The captain, aware of the dangerous situation, suggests sending the men ashore for some time, which might help determine their loyalties. The men happily agree and set off for the beach, while a few remain on board. Under the supervision of Silver, who acts as their true leader, most of the crew appear to be disengaged, which raises concerns. Jim decides to sneak onto a boat and get off the ship, and later feels remorseful. However, he runs into the jungle to hide until his strength weakens. Tensions and challenges mount, foreshadowing adventures to come. Jim begins to feel anxious about trying to evade Silver, but finds himself enjoying exploring the strange island. The bright colors and stunning scenery arouse his curiosity, and he relishes the freedom of exploring lands filled with exotic plants and animals. However, this exploration is disrupted when he hears the voices of men, including Silver. Jim hides to listen to them and discovers Silver talking to a man named Tom, who warns him not to join the rebellion. An argument ensues between them, ending in a tragic scream, as Tom is wounded by Silver. Jim is terrified and fearful, and realizes that he is in real danger. As Jim flees through the jungle, he meets a strange man named Ben Gunn, who has been living on the island for years after being exiled. Ben talks about his life in isolation and expresses his desire to return to normal life. Jim recognizes and trusts Ben, and learns that he was part of Flint's crew. Ben reveals that Silver is the leader of the rebels, and expresses his willingness to help Jim escape. Ben plans to get Jim off the island using a boat he has built himself. As they talk, gunfire rings out, indicating that a fight has begun on the ship. Jim and Ben quickly move into hiding, while the hope of survival and their plans continues. The doctor sits with the captain and Trelawney to discuss how to keep an eye on the mutineers still on board. After learning that Jim has headed to the beach, they decide to go check on him. The doctor and Hunter head towards the fort mentioned on the map, finding it a suitable place to defend. Meanwhile, they hear alarming screams, which increases their concern about Jim's fate. When they return to the ship, they find Trelawney in a state of panic, and they decide to quickly load the boat with ammunition and supplies. The captain is threatened by the mutineers, but he manages to convince one of them to join them. After sailing to the beach, they find themselves overloaded and are challenged by the choppy waves. At a critical moment, they discover that the mutineers are preparing to fire artillery at them. Trelawney takes the initiative and prepares to fire on the ship, while the mutineers fire their shell. Chaos ensues when a shell hits their boat, causing it to sink and losing their supplies. In the chaos, they attempt to escape the rebels and seek shelter in the fort, but the challenges mount as the rebel threat approaches. Everyone feels paralyzed and fearful at this critical moment, reflecting the dire situation they are in. The men race towards the fort as the sounds of pirates approach, and both the captain and Trelawney are ordered to load their weapons and head for the defensive position. As they advance, they encounter some rebels, who fire on them, wounding one. As Tom Redruth lies dying, he is taken to the fort, where he dies after Trelawney asks him to say a prayer for him. The captain begins to prepare the fort for defense and expresses his concern about the lack of supplies, noting that it may be months before another ship arrives. Shells continue to fall from the rebels, but they are not afraid, instead seeing this as an opportunity to deplete the enemy's ammunition. Later that night, Gray and Hunter decide to try to recover the lost supplies, but they discover that Silver's men have taken most of them. The captain records the group's condition in his logbook, counting them among the remaining survivors. As the captain finishes writing, cries of joy rise, and it is revealed that they have seen Jim Hawkins return to the fort, and he is in good health, giving everyone hope after the difficult events of the day. Jim Hawkins arrives at a fort built by Captain Flint. He is concerned when he sees the English flag flying, but it turns out that it is not the pirates who are flying it. He meets Jim Penn, who warns him that the pirates may discover their presence and asks him to send someone from the camp to contact him. Meanwhile, Jim witnesses the pirates dismantling parts of their boat and feels sorry for them. He continues on to the fort and reaches his friends, where he discovers that they are in a critical situation after the loss of one of their own, Thomas Redruth, who has died from his injuries. Captain Smollett talks to Jim about their situation, expressing concern over the lack of supplies. Silver then appears, waving a flag of truce. The captain agrees to meet Silver on condition that he comes unarmed. Silver appears at the fort, but asks the captain to sit down in a comfortable place. The captain refuses, suggesting that Silver is a mutinist. Silver asks for the map to the treasure and offers them safety or half the supplies. The captain responds with a stiffness, threatening to have all of Silver's pirates bound and put on trial if they do not surrender. Silver leaves, warning Jim and his friends that they will regret their actions. After Silver disappeared, the captain exploded with anger at his crew, blaming them for their negligence except for Gray, who remained steadfast in his position. He ordered them to prepare for battle, asserting their numerical superiority provided they followed the plan carefully. Meanwhile, Joyce asked the servant for instructions on how to fire, and the captain shouted in opposition. But Joyce fired first, igniting the battle. The pirates attacked from the forest, climbed the wall, and a fierce battle broke out. The captain was wounded, and several of the crew fell, including Joyce, who was shot dead, and Hunter, who was wounded. However, the rest managed to repel the attack, leaving a large number of pirates dead. Despite the losses, the captain seemed satisfied with the outcome, considering that their chances of survival had increased. Thank you for watching. See you in Part 4.